Welcome to WTH Wildlife, the show about things that go flap flap.
And missing your camera mark.
I'm your host, Ariel.
I'm David.
Just a quick reminder, if you are watching this with a non-adult, be sure to preview it and make sure that you're comfortable with the content and the language that we're using during this episode. About 30% of the US population lives in urban areas. Another 50% of that population lives in the surrounding suburbs. That means that there's not a lot of a chance for wildlife viewing. At least, that's what people think.
However, there's actually a huge amount of biodiversity in cities. You find a lot of the same species in the same cities throughout the entire US. We're going to try and walk through a few of them and help guide you in the identification of them.
When we discuss wildlife, we are speaking about both the fauna and the flora. Some definitions of wildlife only include the animals, but because plants are so important to the ecosystem, we're making sure to discuss them too. Today, though, we're focusing specifically on one of my favorite groups of vertebrates.
Dinosaurs.
Birds.
So, fun fact, birds are highly derived avian theropods. Basically, they come from those kick-ass raptors from Jurassic Park. You know, the cool ones.
This website can give you tons of information on any bird that you've ever seen, and probably a ton of others that you've never even heard of.
It's a bit daunting at first, so we're going to walk you through a few of the basic skills to help you identify birds.
So let's say that you're wandering along, and you happen to look up in the sky, and you see this big V of birds flying overhead. You might go, oh, hey, that's a whole bunch of geese migrating through. You've just used behavior to identify a bird.
Another great method is GISS, which is short for General Impression of Size and Shape.
Hold on a sec. How are we pronouncing this acronym? Is it GIS or GIS?
Jizz. Yeah. Anyway, jizz was a term originally used for identifying aircraft, but it's actually very helpful for identifying birds. If you can identify sort of the patterns and shapes, basically the outlines of a bird, you've got a really good starting mark from identifying species. It's a really good introductory method.
If you see something goose-shaped but smaller and the wings are flapping really, really fast, it's probably a duck species. They tend to be fairly difficult to tell apart when they're flying, and from a distance, especially without binoculars.
With binoculars, though, if you can look at things like the colors on the head, the neck, banding on the wings, the shape of the tail, all those things can help you identify them in flight. And when they're in water, look for basically how low in the water they're sitting. That can help too, believe it or not.
There's so many great resources to help you identify different species. Whether it's a book or a website or a smartphone app, a personal favorite of mine is the Audubon birding app that you can get on your smartphone, or my Peterson's field guides when it comes to having an actual physical book. It's kind of a pick your poison sort of situation.
Arsenic.
No.
We're not going to lie to you. Identifying birds can be really tough. It's one of those things that takes a lot of time and practice.
Sometimes flight patterns can be key. After all, things like woodpeckers, when they're flying, have a very distinct flight pattern. It tends to be a triple flick, so a 1, 2, 3, followed by a longer soar that is pretty much found only in woodpeckers.
Other times, it's really going to be beyond your ability to identify some of these smaller birds. Fortunately, there's a catch-all term for them, the LBB, and depending on who you ask, that either means little brown bird or little brown bastard. And you might wonder why you have to use such an odd catch-all term.
Well, take a look at this little video here. Try imagining identifying these birds from a distance, with or without binoculars, especially when there's a whole bunch of them, and you can tell there's more than one kind there. They're all gonna be little brown bastards.
Yeah.
There's 2 species of birds of prey that you should learn right off the bat. Okay, first of all, that's not a bat. Second of all, where the hell did you get that?
Internet? To the inexperienced eye, red-tailed hawks and vulture species look extremely close to each other. They're dark shapes flying above.
There are a few key characteristics, though, to try to tell them apart. sometimes you're going to see a nice flash of red. It's more of a red-brown on the tail of one of these animals. Unsurprisingly, that would be the red-tailed hawk. You're not guaranteed to see that coloration, though.
Wing shape is incredibly helpful with birds. With red-tailed hawks, usually you're looking for something kind of like this, while a turkey vulture has an angle more like this. Might seem a little bit silly, but it's a really good guide to explain it.
One of the things that I love about turkey vultures is that they are completely inelegant when they're flying. They wobble around a lot, kind of like that friend when you leave the bar that you have to help home. What?
Nothing.
Hawks tend to soar and then flap and then soar, versus vultures, which will soar and soar and soar and soar and then flap, because they're trying to ride the air currents to help them along.
If you're lucky, though, you might notice a very large bird with a long, thin, black profile, and if you're extremely lucky, you might catch a little flash of white at the head or along the tail. If you have, congratulations, you've seen a bald eagle.
Ooh. Of course, there's tons of species that you're going to come across, from the majestic pigeon to the mighty robin or the elegant cardinal or the darling starling or
the bagel.
I hate you.
I know.
This episode, we've got a challenge for you. Get outside and observe and ID a bird. Now, if you can't ID it right away, that's okay. Take a picture of it, sketch it, write down the markings, take notes on what's going on. If you can't ID it, we can try to help you.
Remember, look for things like the size, the shape, and markings on the head, the neck, the wings, the body. Practice with it and you'll build up your skills.
So get out there and see some wildlife. We would love it if you were to share your urban birding experiences with us, either here in the comments or on Facebook or Twitter. Anything from pictures, stories, ID challenges, we want it all.
Also, make sure to check the blog post in the description below. There are some links there to help with your wildlife identification and some other links you can look through.
Thanks for watching WTH Wildlife. Make sure to like and subscribe so you can keep up with what's going on.
Fund us.